Hi, this is Mike Spivey with the Spivey Consulting Group. I promised a podcast on how to take advantage of admitted students' days, admitted students' weekends. So digging in, what are admitted students' weekends? What are admitted students' days? They follow a pretty similar script from law school to law school. They last a day or two. They consist of meetings with student leaders, generally be in the form of a panel, student groups. Mock classes were a new thing when I first started law admissions, but those are very widespread now. So you get an assignment. Oddly, you all seem to like that. You go to a class taught by a law school professor. You get to raise your hand and answer questions. They have a tour of the building, a tour of the campus, and in some rare cases, a bus tour of the city. They have generally a blowout party. So usually it starts in the evening. It's something called bar review, where the current students take you to bars. Don't get too drunk, okay? I'm telling you, it is tempting. I know. I've seen it a million times, but you want to take advantage of the next full day. So just pace yourself the first night. The second day generally ends with a blowout party. Do what you want. More importantly, why do schools do admitted students programs? Because they cost a decent amount of money. And let me tell you from firsthand experience, they are hard to pull off. I used to be in charge of them when I was at Vanderbilt. It took months of planning and work. Organizing different faculty schedules, getting the events people involved, getting the dean, etc., etc. What you see is one day in the life, and it's not even a real day. But what goes behind that day is months and months of work. Please keep that in mind. Keep that in mind because A, be nice to the people who put it on, of course. But B, keep it in mind because you're not seeing a real day at a law school. You're seeing a very orchestrated day. These are yield events. They are put on because the school says it is worth the money and time to get you to come to this because we want you to come to matriculate to our school. So what does that mean? If they want you there, if it's a yield event, it means you have leverage. Leverage is awesome. You can use that to ask for travel stipends. Someone mentioned online, should you come from abroad? I would 100% tell the law school, I would love to go, but I'm in Dublin. What's the maximum amount I can get to fly from Dublin to New York City? You have leverage. They want you. They really want you there. When I was in admissions, we counted daily the number of registrants to each of our admitted students programs, and then we compared to previous years. And every new registrant we were excited about. You have leverage to talk often to financial aid or the dean of admissions, ideally one-on-one, about your financial situation. Don't expect to get a scholarship bump on the spot. That's not going to likely happen. But if the dean of admissions gives you her or his card, their business card, or if the financial aid person gives you their business card, follow up. I'm sure you talked to a lot of students, but I was the one who mentioned I was from South Dakota, and it's going to cost a lot of money for me to move to New York City, and I'm very debt averse. The fact that you go to these events mean you're interested, but don't tip your full hand. I would never go to an event and say, I'm signing on the dotted line. When do I matriculate? Because I want you to have leverage for scholarship negotiation. It came up several times online. How do you pick which admitted students program to attend? I tend to think in terms of a dean of admissions. I don't tend to think in terms of an admitted applicant. So I hadn't thought about this before. I do know, obviously, as a former AdCom, that there are multiple admitted students days often on the same weekend. So Duke, UVA, Vandy may have an admitted students day, and they're all on the same weekend. Which, how do you pick? There's really three things to consider. One is, which school do you know the least about? If you know the most about UVA and Duke, and you know nothing about Vandy, but you have the most amount of money from Vandy and you're interested, I would go to the Vandy one. If you know maybe equal amounts, then I would probably go either to the one you're most interested in, just to reconfirm that you made the right assessment, or I would go to the one where you think you can get the most money out of. Because if, and there's no guarantee, but if you can get one-on-one time with the Dean of Admissions or the Director of Financial Aid and say that you would love to follow up about your scholarship, if you can get a $10,000 or a $15,000 or $20,000 bump a year, then that's $60,000 potential dollars just by going to the admitted students program and politely, very non-aggressively, very softly, just asking if you could be in touch at a future date about your scholarship amount, because you have hard choices to make. You have leverage. Being at these events, subtly expressing that leverage is only going to help you. Someone mentioned if they could go to a Friday one and then go to a different Saturday one. For sure. For many reasons, many admitted students can only attend one of 2 days. So I would probably, if I were in that situation, if I were admitted to Duke and UVA, and there was the same weekend, I would probably do it that way. I would go to Duke one night and UVA the next day. Comparing schools is what this is all about for you. For them, it's just about getting you to yield. For you, it's about being able to compare. How are you able to compare, though, when they're carefully orchestrating the day? The worst thing you can do is overemphasize how nice admissions is, and this happens all the time. And we loved reading about it in admissions. We loved reading online about how great we were. But you're not going to have a long-term relationship with the admissions people, so that's not a good reason to choose a school. It's not a good reason to choose a school because the one faculty member who led the mock class was charismatic and engaging and charming, because they're, of course, putting the most charismatic, engaging, charming professor up in front of you. They're not going to put the boring one, because then you're less likely to pick the school. The students they put up in front of you, the students who tour you around, are going to be the likable ones. If I were you, I would try to talk to the students who aren't part of the day. The students who were just sitting at a table reading a book. It's just a day. Don't be afraid to introduce yourself. Be outgoing. I was born an introverted person, and I turned myself into an extroverted person. So if I can do it, I promise you, you can do it. Introduce yourself to people who aren't part of the day. Note the number of faculty who attend these events. This to me is really important. If 2 faculty attend the blowout party, what is the culture of the school really like? But if 50 faculty members are there, then it's probably a school where the faculty and students get along and care about each other, where it's really, every school is going to tell you it's an open door school, but that's probably the best indication. What about the other students? I used to say it's important to engage in the other admitted students because these are going to be your potential classmates. But we had a discussion about this amongst my firm. And a theme that we've heard many, many times is I loved the current students, but I didn't get along with the other admitted students because they were a bunch of jerks. What that really means is this. They aren't a bunch of jerks. Most of the people that have been admitted who are at the event with you that day are good people who want to do well in law school and well in this world. I have a separate website for motivational stuff. I'm going to do a blog on this and link it to this. And it has to do a little bit of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the period of 18 to 25. People are, for atmospheric reasons, are going to be at their most insecure, feel the most pressure to impress the people around them. And that simply means a lot of people aren't going to be themselves at these events. The current students don't care. There's no pressure on them. The faculty certainly don't care, but other admitted students are going to feel this. And I understand it. I get it. This is not a judgmental statement, but they're going to feel a certain need to impress you. You're going to feel a certain insecurity or need maybe to impress other people. My point being this, I wouldn't overly fine point if there's 100 other admitted students there and a certain percentage of them seem like they're overly bragging, which is a high indicator of insecurity, overly aggressive, whatever. Just that's probably not how they really are. So, I just got off the phone with Dean Zierfoss about something else, and we were talking about admitted students days in this podcast. And she brought up a really good point. This is a great chance to be yourself. So I'll repeat it again. Just be yourself at these events and allow others to get to know who you are. It was asked about bringing significant others and parents. The significant other one is really simple. Yes, feel free, but just let admissions know they need a head count for, if nothing else, for food and chairs. The rest of the people there won't even know it's a significant other. They'll think that you just, hit it off with the fellow admitted student the night before at the bar and think all the cooler of you for it. Parents is a little more difficult because it varies from school to school. If the school says, hey, bring parents, we have things for them, bring them. I mean, particularly if your parents are paying for school or if they're lawyers, if they, take great interest in your academics, bring them. Schools like Georgetown openly encourage it. There's a spectrum of parental participation. Some schools, like Tom Robbins and one of my teammates at Spivey Consulting, when he was at Harvard, he was in charge of the 20 or so parents that showed up, and he would put on a program for them. So there were times where they would go off and do different things. Let your parents know that's very much a possibility, particularly if the school doesn't, say bring your parents. I would just say this. Make sure your parents are comfortable being on their own sometime, exploring the campus. Derek Meeker, one of my partners at Spivey Consulting, mentioned to me a time a father chewed Derek out at the lunch in the courtyard in front of his daughter because the parents weren't allowed to go to the mock class. Well, I mean, to begin with, the parents aren't going to law school, so what's the point? Number two is there just weren't enough seats. So, that put the daughter in a very uncomfortable situation. Again, I guess what I'm trying to find point is let admissions know if you are going to bring your parents, and then let your parents know, hey, there'll be some things you probably can't go to. So, feel free to go to the courtyard or to wander the campus. Some final thoughts. Again, I can't stress enough. Be yourself. Don't be overly aggressive. I can't get into too much detail, but there was a time when I was in admissions where there was an admitted student who was inebriated for essentially 24 or more straight hours because you go to the bar review the night before, and I guess he just stayed out all night. That kind of stuff, I can't get into detail, but that kind of stuff will not go well for you in the worst kind of way. So, the first night I would just keep it toned down. Be polite to everyone at the law school you meet. You never know how much money that can buy you in the scholarship negotiation process. Be the best version of yourself. This is a great time to do it. Another really good piece of advice that kind of came from a question on Reddit is, should you visit again? And I think that is wonderful, because if you visit a non-admitted student's day and you compare it to the admitted student's day, how closely those two dots align is a great indication about the culture of the school. If the non-admitted student's day, where they're not putting on the beer and circus, feels just the same as the admitted student's day, then that's a really great sign. So I would encourage, if you're uncertain about where to attend, if you have the ability, to visit again, for sure. Finally, two personal pieces of note. Number one, I will be at the March 20th University of Florida Levin College of Law, UF Law. I will be at their admitted students day. I'm close friends with their dean, and I've consulted for their law school, and I go to these almost every year. It's fun for me. I'm not sure why they invite me, but I appreciate it very much that they do. And I think that they invite me because I have participated in the past very closely with the law school. But on a personal note, it's great for me to be at this because I get to meet so many people who I've spoken to informally over Reddit and who are at this event. So introduce yourself to me. I'll be there. I am going to do a separate blog on sort of insecurity and shyness. And I used to be a shy person, and there's obviously nothing wrong with that. That's my nature. But these are the kind of events where you want to introduce yourself to faculty and students. So I'm going to do a separate podcast on my spiveyblog.com about that. If you're interested in data, psycho data, we have more coming. It's just on Twitter, Spivey Consult. I grow every year more aware of the fact that this process, that being on message boards, that waiting through the cycle can take its toll on people. So I've recently made an Instagram account. Actually, I made it a long time ago. I just never posted. But I've recently started posting motivational things. It's Mike_Spivey_. Feel free to connect with me on that. I'm trying more and more to post stress relieving thoughts or just funny things that just sort of just take the pressure off the day. This process, it can be tough on people, and we get that. So to the extent that anyone has any ideas of what we can do to relieve the pressure, info@spiveyconsulting.com. And I hope this podcast was helpful. Thanks.